Working the night shift at a gas station in Ravenwood had its moments, but I never expected what happened that fateful Tuesday. Ravenwood was a small town, quiet and uneventful, which was perfect for a loner like me. My name is Alex Parker, and I took this job to save up for college. The solitude of the late-night shifts suited me fine. I enjoyed the silence, broken only by the occasional customer. That night began like any other. I stocked the shelves, swept the floor, and settled behind the counter with a book. Midnight came, and the station was bathed in the flickering glow of the neon sign outside. The eerie stillness was comforting in a strange way, but as the hours ticked by, a sense of unease began to creep in. Around 2 a.m., I decided to step outside for a breath of fresh air. The night was colder than usual, and the air had an odd metallic taste. As I stood there, I noticed a figure standing at the edge of the parking lot, just out of the light. The person was tall and motionless, wearing a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat. They didn't move, didn't make a sound. I squinted, trying to get a better look. "Can I help you?" I called out, my voice breaking the silence. The figure remained still. I felt a chill run down my spine and quickly went back inside, locking the door behind me. I tried to focus on my book, but my eyes kept darting to the windows, searching for any sign of movement. Then, it happened. A soft knock on the glass door. My heart leaped into my throat. The figure was now right at the door, shrouded in shadow. They raised a hand and tapped on the glass with long, bony fingers. I could feel my hands trembling as I approached the door, maintaining a safe distance. "We're closed," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You'll have to come back in the morning." The figure pressed a hand against the glass. The fingers were unnaturally long and thin, with nails that looked more like claws. "Let me in," a raspy voice whispered. I shook my head, stepping back. "No, we're closed," I repeated, trying to sound firm. The figure's hand started to push against the glass harder, making the door shudder. Panic surged through me, and I grabbed my phone to dial 911, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. As I waited for the call to connect, the lights inside the station began to flicker, casting eerie shadows across the room. "911, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice crackled through. "There's someone trying to break in," I stammered. "Please, send help quickly." I provided the address, and the operator assured me that officers were on their way. The banging on the door grew more violent, and I feared the glass would shatter. I retreated to the back room, locking the door behind me and grabbing a metal pipe I had found during a previous shift. My heart raced as I heard the front door finally give way, the sound of shattering glass echoing through the station. The footsteps of the intruder were slow and deliberate. I held my breath, listening intently. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped just outside the door to the back room. There was a moment of silence, followed by a low, guttural growl. The doorknob rattled, and then the door shook violently as the intruder tried to force it open. I gripped the pipe tightly, ready to defend myself. Suddenly, the pounding stopped, and an eerie silence filled the air. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. Just as I began to think the nightmare might be over, the lights flickered back on, and I heard the distant wail of police sirens approaching. Cautiously, I unlocked the door and peeked out. The gas station was empty, the front door shattered, but there was no sign of the intruder. The police arrived moments later, but their search yielded nothing. There was no trace of the mysterious figure with the elongated fingers. The police took my statement, and I tried to describe the figure, but it sounded too unbelievable. They assured me they would patrol the area and keep an eye out, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. After they left, I sat in the back room, my hands still shaking. I knew I wouldn't be able to stay in that gas station alone again. The next day, I handed in my resignation. I needed the money, but no amount was worth the fear that now gripped me. I tried to return to normal life, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw those long, claw-like fingers tapping on the glass. A week later, I was hanging out with my friends at a local diner, trying to distract myself from the events of that night. We were swapping stories and laughing when I noticed a news segment on the TV behind the counter. The headline read, "Mysterious Disappearances in Ravenwood." My blood ran cold. The reporter mentioned several people who had gone missing over the past month, all of them last seen near the outskirts of town. My friends noticed my sudden silence and turned to see what had caught my attention. "Hey," I nodded, unable to speak. The news anchor continued, describing the disappearances in eerie detail. Each victim was last seen around midnight, and witnesses reported seeing a tall, shadowy figure nearby. My friends exchanged uneasy glances, and I could see the concern in their eyes. "Maybe it's just a coincidence," one of them offered, trying to reassure me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I couldn't shake the feeling that the figure I had seen that night was somehow connected to these disappearances. The memory of those long fingers and the raspy voice haunted my thoughts. Days turned into weeks, and the disappearances continued. The police increased their patrols, but the figure remained elusive. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and I felt like I was losing my mind. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every creak of the floorboards made my heart race. One night, unable to bear it any longer, I decided to go back to the gas station. I needed answers. Armed with a flashlight and a renewed determination, I drove to the outskirts of town. The gas station looked the same as it had that night, the flickering neon sign casting an eerie glow. I parked my car and took a deep breath before stepping out. The cold night air bit at my skin, but I pushed forward, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The shattered glass from the door had been cleaned up and a new door installed, but the memories remained. I walked around the back of the station, the beam of the flashlight revealing nothing but shadows. I felt a presence, an oppressive weight in the air. As I rounded the corner, I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the lot, just beyond the reach of the light. The same long coat, the same wide-brimmed hat. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the stillness. "What do you want?" The figure remained silent, but I could see those long fingers emerging from the coat. A sense of dread washed over me, but I stood my ground. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. The figure tilted its head, and for the first time it spoke. "You shouldn't have come back," the raspy voice whispered, sending a shiver down my spine. I took a step back, the flashlight shaking in my hand. "What do you want from me?" "You've seen too much," the figure said, taking a step forward. "You know too much." I stumbled back, tripping over a loose piece of pavement and falling to the ground. The flashlight slipped from my grasp, its beam flickering as it rolled away. The figure loomed over me, its shadow engulfing me. "Please," I begged, my voice barely a whisper. "I just want to understand." The figure knelt down, its face still hidden in shadow. "There are things in this world you are better off not knowing," it said. "Leave this place. Forget what you saw. If you value your life, you will never return." With that, the figure stood and backed away, disappearing into the darkness. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the flashlight and shining it around, but the figure was gone. My heart pounded in my chest as I ran back to my car and sped away from the gas station. I never returned to Ravenwood. I left town and tried to start a new life somewhere far away, but the memories of that night haunted me. The disappearances continued, and the news stories followed me, a constant reminder of the darkness I had encountered. Years passed, and I tried to move on, but the fear never left me. Every shadow, every creak, reminded me of the figure with the long fingers. I knew I would never truly be free of it, that it would always be there, lurking in the darkness, watching and waiting. To this day, I don't know what I encountered at that gas station. Whether it was a ghost, a demon, or something else entirely, I will never know. But I do know one thing. I will never forget the terror I felt that night, and the warning that still echoes in my mind. Leave this place. Forget what you saw. If you value your life, you will never return.